Welcome to this video where we are going to see through a practical demo example how we can use Qlik Application Automation to provision a new tenant in a multi-tenant environment in Qlik Cloud. So a typical multi-tenant deployment in Qlik Cloud involves at least two actors. One source tenant and again at least one target tenant dedicated to a single customer, right? So in the source tenant is something that we need to create, and basically it's the first operation you're going to do when you are going to receive your Qlik Cloud subscription. And then you will use this tenant in order to develop the template application on this tenant. When these template applications are ready and you want to publish them into the production tenant dedicated to the end customer, basically you can export the template app from your source tenant. And then, of course, we can use the Qlik Application Automation to create, first of all, the end customer targets tenant, to create and also configure these target tenants with the user, configuring the IDPs, and so on and so forth. Then creating a data connection to the data sources from where we need to reload the data from, and then upload the template app exported from the source tenant to the new end customer's target tenant. Last but not least, we are going to replace the load script just to refer to the customer specific data and then reload the application. As soon as the application is ready for consumption, we can publish the app into a managed space so that the user can start to analyze data. So this flow of operation require as a prerequisite to start that this first tenant needs to be already provisioned. So this is a one-shot operation that takes place when you follow the Qlik's welcome email as soon as you have received a new license with the multi-tenancy attribute enabled. In this demonstration, we will see instead how to create a target tenant, how to configure a new tenant admin, to configure in general the tenant by creating an out token within the tenant, creating the right spaces in order to host the application that we are going to import, and then finally to deploy a Qlik Sense application that was a template in the source tenant, but that now will be an app ready for production in the target tenant. So in this video, we are going to see a demo on regarding how to create and hydrate the end customer tenant. Before jumping to the demo, I just want to show you the example architecture we prepare, where basically we have a source tenant that was already created with the share space that was used in order to develop the template app. And this source tenant is connecting to a cloud database or data warehouse where we have some test data set, and that also from where we have also the end customer data that will be used inside the end customer target tenant. So in the demo, we are going to create a number of tenants equivalent to the number of customers we are going to provision. And again, the recommended approach, of course, is one tenant per customer. And what we are going to do, basically, we're going to hydrate this target tenant once we configure them by creating a share space towards the data connection and the template app that are moved from the source tenant to the target tenant. The last operation is to make the analytics available for consumption. And so we are going to create a managed space on the target tenant where the apps reload are scheduled and also where the end user can access the analytics inside the target tenant. But now it's time for the demo. So let's go and touch with our hands what we have discussed so far. Okay, so here is how my source tenant looks like. You can see that I started to create some content. So I prepared the tenant in order to do the orchestration from the source tenant and to provision all the customer subtenant. Here, the first thing I did is to create a customer registry application. This was just an idea I had in order to store in a Qlik Sense application the list of customer that are actually active with my service. And so these are the customer that I actually need to provision on Qlik Cloud and creating one tenant per customer. For each customer, I have the customer name, the customer logo and also the base64 representation of the logo itself that I will use in order to rebrand the end customer tenant, because as you know, in Qlik Cloud, you can rebrand the tenant by replacing the top left Qlik logo with the logo of your company or the company of your customer. Together with the base64 image, I have also the Qlik script information. This is basically the where condition I need to insert in the script of the template app when I'm going to publish it to the end customer, because with Qlik you can create one single template app and then you can replace the load script or modify the load script accordingly in order to load only the data for that particular customer every time you are provisioning the template app for one of the end customer. So let me go back to the home, and here, as you saw, also we have the template app that I already built. So here we can have a look to the template app. It is composed of two different sheets. One is an overview dashboard where basically I use a test data set in order to create an overview of my orders, my sales, cost of sales, and quantity, divided also by category, product, and country. This is of course, this is a standard Qlik application, so I can navigate through the dimension and measure, and I can basically start my analysis. And the second sheet I have, it's more a sheet regarding the sales details, where I have some insights regarding the business and also some details regarding the sales by category and also the sales by end orders by product. Together with the two application here, I have also a glossary that I create. A glossary in Qlik Cloud is a tool that enable you to standardize some business term that then you can use also in the analytics space. And I use here the glossary in a creative way in order to store each single customer that I'm going to provision with the application automation and the detail of the tenant provision, the tenant ID, and so on and so forth. And just to be clear here, this is just an option if you want to keep track about the provision tenants inside your source one. But you have many different possibilities to store the list of provision tenants, for example, by using your own database or by using an external repository that can communicate with Qlik Application Automation. Okay, so let's continue the demo and let's have a look to my automation section. Here you can see three different automation I create in order to orchestrate my multi-tenant environment from my source tenant. Here there's a multi-tenant creation automation that, as the name suggests, is the automation that I'm going to use in order to spin up new customers, so spin up a tenant per customer, configure the tenant, hydrate it with the application, with the template application, with the users, and then, of course, the end goal is to make the apps available for the end user consumption in each single tenant. Then I have another automation that is called app redistributions that is used in order to redistribute the template app every time I'm going to make an update. And so we will see it later on in the demo. And then we have also the deactivate tenants. That is an automation in order to deactivate one or more tenants. So let's have a look to multi-tenant creation automation. This is a, let's say, detail automation with four different sections. So I divided the automation in section in order to make it easier to read the automation flow. The first section is where I created also some input parameters, so you can basically make the automation dynamic. And so the automation can receive an input some parameter and can then run according to the parameter that it received. And the good thing is that the automation can be run manually, as we are going to do today, but you can also trigger the automation. You can see on the top right part of my screen that there's an API in order to invoke the automation from an external system. And so, for example, you can trigger the automation run from the installation of your software. So every time you need to provision a new tenant for a new customer, of your software, you can also provision a new Qlik Cloud tenant dedicated for the customer, and you can configure all the tenants. Here in the first section, there are some checks, basically. We are checking if the glossary exists, if the application exists, if the admin of the tenant that we want to create on the new target tenant is an active user of the source tenant. And in case some of the checks are not completed, we are going to exit the automation before starting the provisioning, so before to face any kind of errors, and we will notify the user that he needs to fix some prereqs before starting the provisioning phase. Then the second part, you can see here that I can go from a section to another thanks to the go to label block and label block. Here you can see that we have the part of the new tenant provisioning. So here actually we are creating the new customer tenant. We are listing the user of the source tenant, and we are basically retrieving and creating the admin user on the target tenant in order to have some user to admin the target tenant itself. Then we are creating the spaces. We are creating a space for landing the data, and then a managed space for publishing the application for the end user consumption. And then we are going to import the app. So it's very important the fact that in order to export an app template, we are using the export app to base64 encoded file. So here we are basically exporting the template of the app without the data inside, so just the frame of the visualization and the frame of the data model, but without any data. And here we are doing the same by importing the app on the target tenant without having so far any data inside. We are going to create a connection to the source database from where we load the data into the analytics applications. In this example, I use a Snowflake connection, but this could be any of the wide range of data sources connectors which exist in the Qlik Analytics platform. I invite you to check on qlik.dev, which is the right payload for your data source. And then we have also the possibility to create a no-out clients in order to create an integration that will be needed in order to use Qlik Embed and embed the application using the modern authentication and authorization strategies. Then we can continue our provisioning, and we, as soon as the app has been imported, we are retrieving its load script. This is really important because at the end from the application I show you before, that is the customer registry app that you can see here, and we are going to retrieve the where condition that needs to apply in the script every time we need to publish this app for that particular tenant belonging to that particular customer. So here with this variable new load script, basically we are modifying the standard script of the app, and we are inserting in the script also the where condition, and then we are setting again the script in order that the app now is ready to load just the customer data. The last part of this section is, of course, to reload the app and then to create a brand and activate the brand. What does it mean? It means that, again, we are changing the brand of the tenant, so we are rebranding with the logo of the customer that is containing the base64 image inside the registry application. The last step is to add the new provision tenant and the new customer to the glossary that we previously created. So here we are creating a term in the glossary. The term is correspondent to the customer name, but then in the description we will have the details of their environment. So their host name, the alias, because again, I forgot to explain you, but in the automation we are also creating a tenant alias. And this allows you basically to create a more user-friendly name for the tenant. So this automation is running just one time, but is looping through the number of customers we are going to provision. So this operation is done per customer and so per tenant that we are going to create. And let's start our provisioning. I'm going to run the automation, and here, first of all, I need to select how many tenants I want to provision. I have 8 customers in total in my customer registry. Let's say I have 6 of them that are new, so I create 6 new tenants within my multi-tenant scenario. Here I can select the tenant region, and then here I can also specify who is the tenant admin. In this case, the tenant admin of the newly created tenants will be the same admin of my source tenant, and then I select the template app name. So these are just input parameters that I decided to insert in the automation, but of course you can create all the parameters that you like in order to readapt the automation to your use case. You have probably noticed that the automation was not the easiest one to create, but the suggestion I can give you is to dedicate time for building it, because this is a one-shot operation that can actually save you a lot of time. I'm going to submit my input parameters, and then the automation is starting. First of all, is doing some checks in order to see if the source tenant exists, if the app exists, if all the users that are going to be admin are actually part of the master tenant, that is the source tenant. And then also is checking if the glossary was existing or if that's being created on the fly. And now we are ready to start the provisioning. So from now on, it will create the 6 different tenants. Now it started to create the tenant for the customer called Greenway. And you can see actually here the tenant alias. And then it continues the provision for all the other tenants. So every time it is exporting the app, importing it to the new tenant, creating the data connection, replacing the load script, one per customer. Let's open now a tenant just to see how a tenant looks like. And you can see again here the tenant alias. On the top left, there's the customer logo. And we can actually see that we created 2 different spaces, one for staging. So it's best practice when I need to import an app to a customer tenant to import it in a staging space that is using just to land the app that has been imported. And then another managed space that is the publishing space where we are going to make the app available for the end user consumption. So if we open the application on the target space or on the managed space, we should now be able to see the app with the 2 different sheets of the template app, but also with the data insights that are belonging to that particular customer. So in this case, we were able to apply the where condition in the script, and the app now have loaded just the customer data. By going back to my automation, you can see now that provisioning is over. And if we are opening the 6 different tenants right now, we can basically see that each single customer have its own application in its own tenant, and that contains also only its own data. So Greenway, Boleros, Copacabana, Art and Fashion, Bigfoot shoes, you can see how the data are different from customer to customer, right? And also how the tenant URL is different from customer to customer. So this was the end of our provisioning phase. And just to show you the output result, in the business glossary, we created an item per customer. And so for each customer here, we can have its original tenant host name with the alphanumerical string that is a unique across each single tenant. And then the tenant alias I assigned to the customer, and also the tenant ID. Tenant ID is important because if I'm going to deactivate the tenant, it is possible to reactivate the tenant within the purge period, but in order to reactivate it, you need the tenant ID in order to run the API call. We came to the end of this demo where I show you how from my source tenant I can spin up a multi-tenant environment from scratch thanks to an automation and its built-in platform operation connector. The next step of a typical multi-tenant scenario is to orchestrate the updates of the target tenants app every time a new release of the template app is made. I invite you then to see the dedicated video in order to understand how you can republish an existing application after applying the modifications. Thanks for watching.